It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. My lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold.
Good morning, everybody. Today's August 5th, and I want to welcome you to Coffee and Cloud Native. My name is Adrian Goins. Every night I scour the internet for news and content related to Kubernetes and Cloud Native, and I find lots of things that have nothing to do with Kubernetes and Cloud Native, and I don't talk about them. But every day you will find me here to share the bits that I do find interesting. This is a curated list of content. I go through around 200 submissions every night, and I select around 10 for the next day's show. Lots of different criteria, but the primary one is that if I wouldn't use it, then I won't talk about it. If you're watching, now or in the future, please click the thumbs up button on the video so the YouTube algorithm shares it with other people. I try to end each day with new knowledge that I didn't have when the day began, and I am grateful that you're here with me so that we can all learn and grow together. We only have a half an hour, and I have so much to talk about today. So let's get started. Ooh, Kubernetes failures. Good morning, Sebastian. So, there are lots of Kubernetes failures, blogs and websites and things like that out on the internet. But this one from GrapeUp talks about what happens when you run Kubernetes clusters at scale. We're running more and more clusters, and we're running them with larger and larger node counts. And the people that are running really massive clusters have found that beyond a certain size, there's a whole nother range of unexpected issues that appear. And this isn't the only story that I have today that talks about this particular issue. So the article talks about common issues that surprised even experienced operators, like not having the browser zoomed in. Hey, look at that. You can read it too. Hurrah! So things like, did you know that etcd has a data store maximum size, and it's not related to 32-bit, even though their example shows 2 gigabytes in size. So you can change that. Like, all of these things are configurable. They're just defaults that you don't think to change when you're running smaller clusters. So etcd data store size. Oh, ndots. I hate the ndots issue. If you don't know about the ndots issue, it's a relatively unused resolve.conf configuration for the DNS resolver that decides at what point the DNS node will accept what you've given it. FQDNs, fully qualified domain names, actually are supposed to end in a period. So it's, google.com dot, and that indicates that it's fully qualified. Google.com is not. We don't generally run into this because our systems are smart. They use a smaller ndots number, so they actually start out looking at google.com or something else. But inside of Kubernetes, it defaults to ndots of 5. So you end up wasting huge amounts of DNS queries, and you end up finding stuff not going where you expected it to go, and it's just ugly. But fixable. Fixable with the DNS policy, and setting all your stuff to ndots 1. So he talks about that here as well. I have run into that. Okay, that's enough. What else? ARP caching. Values that you can set for the minimum, soft, and hard. Well, minimum number of values kept in the cache, and then the soft and hard limits, so that you don't have ARP cache overflows, resulting in all your layer 2 communication falling apart. We got people joining the chat. Good morning, Ariel. Good morning, Peter and Trix. Hey, good morning, Trix. Very nice. Thank you all for joining me. I was thinking this morning that in another month or so, Chile's going to go on to daylight saving time, and I'm still going to do the show at 7:30 because nobody knows what time it is in Chile, and more important, nobody cares. I tend to just pin myself to Eastern time. So the show will continue to be at 7:30 Eastern, which means I get to do it at 8:30. And then when the United States comes off of daylight saving time, I'll still do it at 7:30 Eastern, but for me, it'll be 9:30. Won't that be luxurious? It'll be like my 8th coffee by then. All right, so back to this. Other sorts of issues. If you spin up a new node, and if your node has a reasonable size to it, it might try and pull down hundreds of gigabytes of images, but it might try to do it in series, not in parallel. Once again, configurable. And you can also configure the progress deadline, the point at which Kubernetes decides that it's never going to get the image and stops trying. good article to read, introduces you to some common issues, and even if you're not running clusters at massive scale, it's still cool to hear about what other people have going on. Over on the DNS side of things, you'll see my tweet going out later today about this, where I'm like, welcome to 2001, where we knew that you needed caching servers in your DNS infrastructure. Good morning, Espen. But Kubernetes is like, we don't need all that stuff. Forget it. We'll just use 2 core DNS boxes, and who cares if you've got thousands of nodes? They'll be fine. Not even core DNS boxes, core DNS pods. Well, you're not going to be fine. And since 1.18, this has been a stable addition to Kubernetes so that you can run caching pods on all of your nodes. Hooray! It's easy to set up. It will take the load off of your core DNS pods, and it enables some other really useful things. For example, DNS requests by default are UDP. UDP is stateless, so the connection track module doesn't know when to, like, are you done talking? Are you going to use this connection again? I don't know. So it has to time out. Versus TCP connections, which will fall out of the contract table when the connection is actually closed. The caching pods will respond to UDP queries. They will simply forward those queries in TCP, so none of your downstream applications need to change. They'll all do their DNS the way that they normally do. And caching. Jeez, yeah. You can also configure it to do negative caching, where it will cache NX domain responses. That's kind of hit or miss. I find that when I'm doing testing stuff, I really don't like DNS resolvers that do NX domain caching for 2 hours. So I find myself flushing DNS tables everywhere. Decide if you want that. But if you do, it's also available. You should just set this up. Continuing in the storyline of stuff that falls apart when you're doing large things. That doesn't make any sense. I'm gonna drink some coffee. Stuff that falls apart when you're running large clusters. Lyft was running more than 1,500 cron jobs in their Kubernetes cluster every single hour. Huh. There's more than 1,500 minutes in an hour, so that was a lot of resource contention. They'd moved everything over from a Linux cron infrastructure because they realized that, I thought this was just ridiculous, they had machines dedicated to running a cron job that ran it once a week for 15 minutes. So I guess the machine wasn't dedicated to the cron job, the machine was dedicated to the job itself. So you've got a machine that runs a job for 15 minutes once a week, and the rest of the time it's just sitting there racking up charges in AWS. So they moved everything over to Kubernetes, and then everything sort of just kind of fell apart. The article covers, so it's part 1 of 2. It's actually a bit of a cliffhanger. I came across this a couple of days ago, and part 2 will be out today. So if we're lucky, I'll get that into the show for tomorrow. Let's scroll down to the problems. So they figured out that cron jobs in Kubernetes don't run like cron jobs in Linux because there's all this other overhead around the running of the job, and Kubernetes will retry jobs. It will stop trying jobs. If a job fails often enough, it'll just give up on it forever. So you need to pay attention to what's going on in there. The cron job controller iterates over cron jobs every 10 seconds, and then it issues an API call for each of them. And beyond a certain number of jobs and requests, Kubernetes rate limits the API calls. So this starts a cascading failure as more and more jobs get requeued, and then the rate limits increase, and it all gets backed up, and it's like you're on the freeway in California, or I guess in Denver these days. I haven't lived in Denver for years, but I hear the traffic is a nightmare there as well. He continues to talk about how they, the problems that they found, how they did the troubleshooting, how the cron scheduler works, and it's a really good breakdown into what you can expect and how you need to shift your thinking when you're moving from a Linux cron environment to a Kubernetes cron environment. And then it stops. If I scroll down here to the bottom, it's like, and bad things happened. Dum, dum, dum. So we'll get the second half of the article in here where they're going to talk about the changes that they made to get their cron resource stuff to work better. If you are a Fargate user with ECS or EKS, Amazon dropped a treat for you a couple of days ago. This is one of the ones that got punted out of yesterday, but it's still news. You can now get CloudWatch metrics for your Fargate quotas. So they've enabled a thing called service quotas, and this combines Fargate Spot and Fargate On Demand quotas into one place. How novel. Which makes it easier for you to see where you are in resource consumption, which nodes are actually consuming resources. You can trigger alarms. You can take action. I guess this probably came up because people were just finding themselves out of resources, and that was bad. So there you go. Now you can see. This is funny. I have a friend of mine who dropped $100 for a proctored exam from AWS. And AWS doesn't actually do their exams. They farm it out to a couple of exam companies. And this particular one, literally, they farm it out to two. This particular exam was only available from, not this one, but the one that he was trying to take was only available from one of them. And they say, show up, it's proctored, so you got your little webcam and you got to be visible. They say, show up 30 minutes before and basically sit there staring at the camera. So he did. Time the test rolls around, dude doesn't show up. He waited for another 20 minutes, just like he's in an interrogation room, just like sitting there staring at his webcam. Dude never showed up. So he calls he calls the company. He spends another 30 minutes on hold waiting for somebody to pick up the phone. Somebody finally picks up the phone and he's explaining the problem and they hang up on him. And he calls back and he can't get through to anyone. He sent stuff to their email forms. Anyway, the point being that for him and for lots of people, $100 is like, I don't care how much money you have. $100 is a lot of money. And he felt like he'd just kind of thrown that away because now he's got to charge back on his credit card and he's got to do all of this extra stuff. He just wanted to take the test. I found for him, after yesterday, I suggested that he go and do the Linux Foundation Cloud Engineer Bootcamp. And that's $1,000, even though it includes the CKA, so that's, you kind of get your money back on that. But it was $1,000, and he's like, I'm not working right now, I can't do that. But then this came across my desk. It's 99 cents. It's 99 cents. It's from Alibaba Cloud, but it's 410 minutes of video. I'm not sure it's in English, allegedly, but it's 99 cents. Now, even if it's for Alibaba Cloud, like, how different can they be? Cloud is kind of the cloud. Like, I don't imagine that the Alibaba Cloud is so dramatically different that the skills that you can get from a 99-cent course are totally not transferable. So I wanted to throw this out there because it's funny. And because there's probably information in there that people can use. So if any of you take this, I mean, why not? Like, at 99 cents for 7 hours, it's a great deal. But maybe this will be enough for people who don't want to start at like the lower tiers of like the intro to cloud type stuff. Maybe this will get you started, and then you can do a little bit of extra studying and go right into taking the courses and exams for the higher tiers of cloud infrastructure stuff. 99 cents, and apparently they've got an exclusive offer for an additional penny. For $1, you get a course and a magical treat. Right on. I mean, Alibaba Cloud, like those of us who deal with Amazon and Google and Microsoft and stuff, they're not like on the other side of the world. They're legit. They're huge. If you take their class, let me know. I'm not going to take it. Contour. Contour is another ingress controller. It's based on Envoy. Lots of stuff seems to be based on Envoy. They released 1.7 2 days ago. So this portion of the show is now about releases, projects that get new releases. If they're popular enough, I'll just talk about them. If the triggering of a release brings them to my attention, then that's how they get on the show as well. So Contour, I knew about. It's a basic, no-frills ingress controller. It acts as, basically Contour acts as a control plane. Do they have a picture of it here? They don't have a picture of their architecture, but if you go to their actual website, it acts as a control plane for the Envoy proxy pod that does the actual heavy lifting of the proxy. Now, it's not a service mesh, and they're pretty clear that they don't want to be a service mesh. Like, there's just one thing that they want to do, and they want to do it really, really well. They do have their own CRD for more advanced functionality than the standard ingress, but that just seems to be like de jure. If you're an ingress controller, like the ingress seems to be more of a a common base that everybody's like, you just can't do enough with it. So when you outgrow that, you can start looking for the features that you need in the other ingress controllers, whether that's Nginx, HAProxy, Contour, or API gateways like Glue. And Kong. Hi, Kong. We don't want to forget you, too. Yeah. I was watching back some of the shows, and apparently when I get to the end of talking about something, I just say, so there you go. Because I don't have anything else to say. Contour 1.7 released. When you're a project that strives to do one thing and strives to do it really well, and that's all you do, the unfortunate side effect is that there's not a lot to talk about except saying, hey, they do this. And they try to do it really well. Good job. Oh, hey, look, I have their other website open. Their actual website. Yeah, but I don't have any pictures there either. So we'll just skip to the next one. Active monitor. Yeah. When I think of monitoring, I've a number of things coming up in the next few tabs that I spent some time with. I was actually up pretty late last night and spending time going through all of these things because some of them, like, I really had to sit back and pick them apart in my head. And this was one of them. When I think of monitoring, I think of it as like the, hey, are you alive? And something's like, yes, I'm alive. Hey, are you alive? Yes, I'm alive. And that's the kind of monitoring that we started out with. And then after that, we got to, hey, are you behaving? And they're like, no. And then, you do whatever you need to do to get it to behave. This takes that idea and flips it kind of on its head. It hooks into the Argo workflow controller to provide not just a live dead monitoring of resources, but more of a test-driven form of monitoring that's built on Argo workflows. So it can not only verify that things are alive or dead, but it can verify that they were created. This is for Kubernetes, obviously. It can verify that resources were created the way that they were supposed to be, that the collective functionality of a group of resources is behaving as expected, and then it can do remediation of the problems that it finds. Which, Argo is connected to the whole GitOps model of doing things, so that seems like a logical conclusion, a logical place for it to go. But their tests are more like, it's more like an assertion of test state. Like I test and I get an expected result. Which, if you think about it, that's kind of what monitoring is, but just looking at it from a different direction. And I really love projects that take something and just flip it around and say, well, if you look at it like this, you can do a lot more. This is definitely one of the ones that does that. They give examples of the kind of stuff that they can do. It will handle all of the necessary RBAC configuration for the health checks themselves. And it's expressly designed for relationship style testing. And then almost as like a side note, they say, oh yeah, and we'll export metrics to Prometheus if you want to graph this stuff, because like that's table stakes. They don't have information that I could quickly find last night about how they do remediation. Remediation might be as simple as, they just rebuild resources according to what's in the repo. I'm not sure. But active monitor. What do we say? There you go. When I teach my weekly Intro to Kubernetes class for Rancher, I introduce people to Kustomize. And it's a pretty big step because we get a lot of people in the class that have never done anything with Kubernetes. And I, in addition to teaching them all the CLI stuff, I say, look, from the very beginning, I want to at least show you what's possible with an infrastructure as code, GitOps methodology for your manifests using Kustomize. And then I proceed to teach both styles so that they understand what's going out there. So that they understand what's available and they can start to make decisions based on that availability. And one of the things that I talk about specifically is how Kustomize handles configmaps. I really like that configmaps are dynamically refreshed inside of the pods and ultimately inside of the containers. But from a GitOps model, that's potentially bad. So Kustomize by default, when you reload configmaps, will actually create a new indexed configmap, a new configmap name, and then it will do a dynamic, it'll do a rolling update of all of the stuff that uses it. If you don't want that, you can turn it off in Kustomize, and some people don't, and that's fine. Depends on what's going on for you. But what if you're not using Kustomize? Oh, well, what do? Do you have to manually keep track of changing your config file names? Well, no, you can use this. This had a release that came out yesterday. Well, actually, I refreshed this last night, so it probably came out 2 days ago. And it watches config maps and secrets, and then it performs rolling updates on whatever's using them. And it just runs inside of Kubernetes. And that's pretty cool. So if you're not using Kustomize, and you still want that functionality, and if you're not, going all crazy with GitOps, this will work for you. This is called Reloader, and it's from, I think their name is going to be pronounced Staccato, like staccato. But whenever I look at it, I just see Skater. What's up, Skater? You can have like an Avril Lavigne theme or something. He was a staccato boy. He used... No. I'm not going to promise that I won't do that again. And on to Logging Operator. If you are looking for the biggest, baddest multi-tool for logging in Kubernetes, you're not going to get any better than Fluentd and Fluentd. This operator, if you watched the show yesterday, you heard me talk smack about operators. That's okay. These don't fit that model. And I think, in fact, in another couple of tabs, I'm going to talk specifically about operator land. Oh my gosh, I'm going to run out of time again. Okay. This operator from Bonsai Cloud deploys and configures Fluentd and Fluentd in a myriad of different ways with features like namespace isolation. They got a picture down here. We like pictures. Namespace isolation, TLS encryption, configuration validation, multiple output support, transformations, and all sorts of stuff. The only thing that people seem to love more than logging in Kubernetes is having control over how that logging happens. And we've gone from the days where you just needed an ELK stack or that you needed an EFK stack. You can't say EFK. It's too much like FEK. You can't say that. But anyway, we've gone past all that. So fortunately, we don't have to say it anymore. And now we're to where things need more power and more flexibility. And Fluentd with Fluentd and this operator just looks sick. Sick in a good way. So 3.5.0 came out yesterday. I don't know, these updating automatically? Let's refresh that page and see what it tells me. Oh yeah, came out yesterday. Okay, there you go. Came out yesterday. There you go. I need to come up with something new to say. Moving on. Wordpress Operator. This is an example of an operator doing what an operator is supposed to do, which is deploying lots of things and configuring and wiring up lots of the same things. Say what you want about WordPress. It is the beast of a blog, the beast of a website. Lots of people use it. And there are sites that run lots of WordPress sites. All right, I have a bone to pick with WordPress because if you run WordPress's default container, you can't actually do upgrades. They say that you can, you just run the new container image. But all of the actual container content is stored in WP content and it doesn't get updated when you update the container. All of your core content is still, 4.2 or whatever. I built a container that solves that model that is used in a handful of different places, not enough places for me to keep it up to date, so I'm not going to tell you where it is. But I don't know how they are solving those issues. I haven't actually tested this, but I do like that they have a CRD for a WordPress site that contains all of your configuration, and they just go stamp this out in Kubernetes land. This, 0.10.2, a few days ago, good operator. If you run WordPress sites, check this out. Oh, kube-vip. Wait, is kube-vip the tool of the day? No, it's not. Okay, so we have to go through this kind of quickly. This was another one of those where I was like, what? In fact, I'm just going to go to their site. It's super basic. It's a bare metal load balancer, much like MetalLB or Porter, except they don't do BGP. They just do the layer 2 ARP thing. But they've gone beyond that. And if you go under their Kubernetes service thing, they have a whole thing about how to deploy it, and it's the main difference for the load balancer functionality is that you can do subnet by namespace. So instead of being one cluster-wide controller that has a pool of IPs that creates load balancers for the cluster, you can actually have load balancer IPs assigned by namespace. Maybe cool, I guess. You can do things if you have namespaces assigned to clients, then you know those IPs belong to those clients, and you can do things with them if they don't pay you enough money. I don't know. It's a neat little side feature that they threw in there. But then, The same engine can be used for building an HA Kubernetes cluster. Their example uses kube-vip. I'm not a fan of kube-vip. However, I'd like to figure out if there's a way to get this structure into something like K3s or to use it with something else besides kube-vip. The problem with building a multi-node HA Kubernetes cluster is that your kubeconfig will point to a single control plane node. And I see this all the time in the Rancher user Slack. People are like, oh, I rebooted a control plane node and I can't talk to the cluster. You have to go in and manually change the address of what you're talking to, or you have to drop a load balancer in front of it, or you have to zoom the browser window in, or you have to click the like button. That helps too. And they just said that they don't want to do that. So their system spins up this kube-vip load balancer and then attaches that to the Kubernetes cluster, where you have multiple control plane nodes, but they're bound to a VIP that's bound to a node as a secondary IP. And if that node goes down, the kube-vip components move the IP to a different node, and you still get the same inbound access to control plane functionality. Which is so totally obvious, and so totally amazing, and so totally using kube-vip, so I can't really play with it. If you use kube-vip, or if you use this, or if anybody plays with this, or if you look at it and, I mean, I'm not a developer. I was a developer in a previous life and I wasn't a very good one. But if you look at this and if it's possible to make this work with another Kubernetes distribution, like K3s or RKE or something, let me know in the comments. And we'll see if we can get further into this. Now we have the tool of the day. Tool of the day. Tool of the day. See, I told you I was going to do it. The tool of the day today is actually an alpha level tool. This is built by a guy. It's not fully fleshed yet. For example, it runs as a local binary. You have to build it yourself. He doesn't have releases out there. But what it does is gives you a really simple UI for config maps and secrets. So if you use this with Reloader, you could have people actually able to change config values on running deployments without necessarily even needing to do stuff in the CLI. I mean, granted, Rancher, you can do all of this inside, but I like to give you guys tools that not everyone uses Rancher, and I recognize that. And this isn't a Rancher show. This is an Adrian Goins show. If you look at this, and somebody says there's a keyboard behind me and we need a tool of the day jingle. If only I had the time, I know. Except it would probably be like metal, like tool of the day. Nobody would like that. Anyway, this looks like a really cute, cool little app. I don't know if he built it as a proof of concept, but he wants to do more with it. And I think we should just go and look at it. If any of you can help him, at least make releases for it so we can get it out there. If we can open some issues, if we can help him get it as an in-cluster resource and do something with RBAC so that people can't take advantage of it. I think that there's a place for this in the Kubernetes landscape. So it's a little baby tool of the day. It's like my first screwdriver, and that's not my first screwdriver that we all had when we were 14. I just thought it was cool. I thought it could use some love and attention, and hopefully it doesn't suck. I think it looks cool. All right, let's just quickly check the chat because. Devin, what GitOps operator do you recommend using customize? I'm using Flux and Helm operator. No customize for me yet. I am not proficient enough in GitOps to talk about it intelligently. I can tell you that Rancher 2. Y'all know I work for Rancher. I use Rancher stuff. I've got Rancher stuff everywhere. Rancher 2.4 doesn't have a good GitOps story, but Rancher 2.5 will have an excellent GitOps story. I've read the stuff from Weave. I get the idea behind it. And there you go. Yeah, so I don't have an answer for that. Kobu says, I wish these logging tools just knew what the parse format is. I can't tell you how many hours I spent with Logstash being like, but that's what I told you to do. And it's just like, I don't understand your configuration syntax. And I'm like, no, it gets so confusing. And like, after a while, your brain gets tired and then, no. So Kofu says, I use Argo CD with Customize and Helm. I switched from Flux, but I do miss the feature where Flux figures out the new images available. Argo doesn't do it, but it has a fantastic UI and SSO integration. I'm not sure what Rancher's going to integrate with. I know certainly Argo and Flux are the two big players as far as the CI/CD systems go. I don't work with CI/CD systems. Like, I don't build code and push it to get it deployed out, and I don't make changes to my clusters often enough to have justified spending the time to go and sit down and figure those things out. All right, we are out of time. What does that mean? Well, it means we're out of time. It means that's it for today. It means that I'm going to post all of the links in the video description as soon as the show ends. If you follow me on Twitter, you will get a notification when that happens. It tends to take about a half an hour for me to get it all up and pushed out and stuff like that. And then every half hour, you'll see another tweet about the specific thing with timestamps. If there's something you'd like me to consider for the show, hit me up, let me know. My contact details are in the video description, or you can tweet with the CNCN hashtag, and I will pick it up. If I mentioned a tool that you use, tell me in the comments, and lots of you have been doing that. Thank you. And of course, if you liked what you saw today, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, be sure to click the little bell to get notifications when the next show starts, and tell your friends. I'll be here every weekday, as long as there's something to talk about. And since I always run late, apparently there's always something to talk about. Have a great day, everybody, and keep learning. I will see you in the next show, which is tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye.